Hey, Dan?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to work this thing. Anyway, we're rounding everybody up. I think Brian is just walking in, and then John will be down here in a second.
All right.
This is RDI on the line.
Hi, this is Jerry Graham and Brian Unruh and Jose in Fort Worth.
Is this Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan and Brian.
Yeah, Ryan. This is Dan Gorski. We know you.
Dan, I'm quietly sitting in the background.
Good morning, Deepak.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, I guess.
I guess it depends on how much bourbon you drank last night, huh, Dan?
Well, that was 0 last night. Did have a cigar though.
Oh, there you go.
Let's see. We're lacking just 1 or 2 people. Hang on one second.
I'm here. Hey, John. I'm here.
Dan right up. Dan.
You
Hello, Dan. With the analysis, we can do gravity. We can do bleaching.
Ward Sumner
Flow test.
said he was going to be joining the call.
Ward is?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sent
Sent these pictures.
Yeah, that's what you sent this morning.
5 samples.
So this would be I had Queen. I mean, they're big. There's a bucket behind that. And then this is the other one. Is that satisfaction? Yes. That's that picture where I showed you the trees.
Okay, so.
Those boxes that were on the floor all wet.
Yeah.
Angela moved them out before.
Okay.
Did you have a leak?
Yeah.
Oh, Jerry?
Yeah.
I talked to Deepak earlier today on some other business, and I kind of gave him a heads up on, the general background of what's going on here. So he basically knows roughly what we've got in mind.
Well, that's great.
Who did he talk to?
He talked to Deepak. I probably should just, I'm just telling Jerry, Deepak and Ryan, and Deepak I think was the impetus behind DPI.
Okay.
And so Jerry was just unaware who Deepak was.
Yeah, I got it now.
Anyway.
John Harrison is on his way down. He's going to join us, and then we'll be ready to go.
Jerry, a little background. RDI is a metallurgical research corporation in Denver that we used for our initial work at Round Top. It's a company that's very highly respected in the mining industry.
Okay, great.
How do I look this up? Do you still have that email that you can look at? Oh, no. Let me look it up.
Dan, have you got a handle on your other mining operations? You got everything under control, or
well, we're
still running ragged?
We're negotiating with a group now that looks like it's likely to go somewhere. Plus, we basically, we're not flush, but we're certainly in no danger of going away.
How you been? Good.
Okay. Well, John Harbison just walked in, so I think we got everybody we're expecting. So we have on the phone Ryan from RDI and Dan Gorski.
Great.
And Ward Sumner, he may join.
Yeah, he was having trouble. I got to send him the conference call.
You want me to send it to him?
Okay.
So you got
wanted me to text it.
Oh, okay. He can catch up, I guess.
Yeah.
Ryan, where are you located?
We're just outside of Denver,
Okay.
suburbs of Denver.
Oh, thanks.
Did we get any test run on the material we picked up?
Yeah, Brian will give you an update on that. Here's what this material looks like. As I understand, these are the dumps, so they really hadn't been crushed. Or, just a sample.
And we're hoping the dumps give us better returns than the
Well,
tailings.
yeah, I think they can tell us that, but common sense would say they would. But
I don't know if we brought back any tailings.
yeah, I don't know.
I think all the rocks that I worked with were all dumps.
Yeah.
That's probably better. I think we've done the tailings before. Isn't that what we did?
The tailings, all he did was tailings.
They're right now assaying at like 2 feet.
Oh, what material?
Silver.
Oh yeah, silver. Silver from Naiad Queen is the one that's assaying 2 ounces.
Guys, if you'll speak a little closer to the mic, we can listen. We are barely getting.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, he was trying to be quiet. He didn't know he was on the conference call.
He can catch up. Why don't we just go? I just said that.
Well, what did we learn from our trip? Who wants to?
Let me kind of
Dan would be a good
start
start.
things off. That Deepak, that the property is at a district up in Grant County. It's about 4 miles from, maybe 3.5 from the Santa Rita pit. It's an old district called Georgetown. It was active back in the 1880s, and quite extensive workings. There's a couple of fairly big dumps, and a lot of it they mined in from the outcrop along a dipping sequence where you had the Fusselman limestone immediately underlying the Purchase
Ward,
which is a fairly common mineral occurrence in southwestern New Mexico. That this particular contact has been mined in a lot of places. The deposits range from fairly small to pretty significant, depending on the overall strength of the mineralization in the district. That its proximity to both the Santa Rita porphyry copper and the Hanover district kind of puts this one in a fairly high priority as having potential for maybe some more ore in it. That most of the mining was done along this one stratigraphic contact zone, although old data indicates that there was a shaft with deeper workings down in the underlying limestones, and of course, like almost all old data, they conclude that there's ore down there. So you have to regard that, with a certain amount of caution. But
How deep was that you're talking about?
the shaft, the one deep shaft, is supposed to be 600 feet from the collar, so that would probably put it something like maybe 350 or 400 feet below the zone that was mined most intensively, that the ore was all oxidized. I think there's a couple of references that they might have seen a little bit of galena at some places in that system, but basically it's fairly high, it's pretty high grade silver, was direct shipping. They probably in the old days had a stamp mill with some kind of a gravity process that they apparently tried to make some concentrates. There's no tailings there that would indicate there'd been any volume of rock actually milled at site. And like most of those early silver camps, when silver was demonetized in 92, 93 range, it kind of sputtered out and has not been really systematically mined since then. There's been a few leasers in at various times over the years, but basically it was the district was operated by one company back during its heyday. So we are assuming that, it was probably run pretty much like a business when it was operating. But other than that, there's a few old partial underground maps that would come from a variety of sources, principally the New Mexico Bureau of Mines, which has a good library on historic districts in New Mexico. Nothing in the way of underground sampling or anything like that. There has been a couple of drill holes drilled in it, but I have not seen any really quantitative data about the ore zone. The principal focus of attention right now is two fairly large dumps that aggregate probably something on the order of about 100,000 tons. And we're looking at that from two perspectives. One is, is there potential for some recovery of, some economic recovery of material in those dumps? And then interpreting those dumps to try to understand what might be left underground. And basically that's where we are right now. That we took several buckets of samples last week or week before last, I guess now, of material that not intended to be strictly representative, but a sample that you could use for a characterization study to just see what is in the dump and what sort of process you might use, gravity, leaching, whatever, to see what you do to recover it.
Okay, then you have some postulated idea of what the high end and the low end assets may be? What's the range of silver?
In those bucket samples, we're going to be looking at something between 4 and 8 ounces. You think that's on the money, Brian and Jerry?
Yeah, our kind of composite samples of Naiad Queen were about 2 ounces, and a composite sample of Satisfaction Extension was about 6. But we have select material that can go higher than that.
Well, those ranges, I think, are probably going to be pretty reasonable for the dumps.
Okay, and historically, you were saying that they did not do any processing at site. They just I graded it and shipped it.
Yeah, it was direct shipping, and some old literature says that they had a stamp mill and some probably Wilkley tables or something like that, but there's no tailings there. It was certainly very minor if there was any milling.
The mill burned down sometime. This is Ward. It's burned down sometime in the middle of all this. So I think then they decided not to rebuild.
Okay. No, I mean, it looks, from all likelihood, it looks like the gravity circuit is what they had. Okay.
Yeah, that I'm pretty sure is what they were doing.
So what our thoughts would be, if we want to characterize the material, understanding that it may or may not be representative, I would turn around and look at getting the head analyses done, and also do some work on gravity, just exploratory tests on gravity and exploratory tests on direct leaching, just to make sure that it's leachable silver. With the presence of galena, it tells you that it may be sulfur salts that may tell you that you may have no choice but to either look at leaching or look at flotation.
They tend to stress in the old literature that the district was low in lead, and the old data.
How about sulfur?
Pardon,
it may be low in lead, but if sulfur is there, then you've got a lot of sulfur salts, and silver is present as minerals associated with sulfur.
Deepak, my gut feeling, and based on the old literature, I don't think there's going to be much sulfur salts in it. They claim the old reports that it was pretty much a silver chloride.
Right.
If that's the case, then gravity should work fairly well, or at the most, if we need to, then leaching should work. So my recommendation at this stage would be to characterize the material and just look at it more from, maybe we should even make get the assays and look at the highest grade and even do a quick mineralogy on it. And run gravity tests and also run leach tests just to make sure you can recover most of it. And if gravity recovers, that's the cheapest process that you're going to employ out there, and permitting is going to be much easier when there's no cyanide involved.
Water may be a problem, but I guess we'll see.
Well, I guess the first step is to decide what the character of the ore is.
Can we go in there and just start moving dumps around, okay, or
I think it would require a minimal impact permit, which appears to be very straightforward to move more than.
We're not digging anything up per se. I mean, we're not digging into the bedrock.
Right.
And they might actually like it that we're.
I think they'll like it, but I still think
clean it.
We probably have to have a permit for it.
Yeah. They'll like it, but they'll still want some money.
Yeah, I think there's no problem getting it.
No, man, that's why characterization is going to be a good thing. If you can characterize and say, well, it's got some sulfides that are going to leach in there, and that's going to create problems. So you can get the permit for cleanup much easier.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And with the cleanup, your objective would be to recover as much value as you can while you're cleaning up, and that makes getting the permits a lot easier.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There, Deepak, there is also a, well, Dan may know more history on this than anybody, but there were apparently dumps that were gathered up and piled up, and back in the 80s, it was crushed and tried to do a leach with it. I don't know that it was very successful, but that mountain has been more or less capped and reclaimed. Would it be worth exploring any of that material?
My feeling is probably not. There was an attempt made back in the 80s, Deepak, that my guess, looking at that pile, is about 10 to 15,000 tons were put up on some kind of a leach pad, and I don't think there was any. It was probably crushed. What do you think it was crushed to? About ½ inch? But at any rate, it didn't work very well because it just really, I don't think, was very well engineered by the guy that was doing it.
It may have had a bunch of shale in it and made clays and blocked things up. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
No, before getting into it, that's why just the exploratory test, just to see if it's cheapest to, and environmentally it's the easiest to get permitting is to do gravity, because there's no chemicals involved.
Right.
Okay. But in conjunction with that, our recommendation is look at leaching also, just to make sure that if gravity you can't economically recover it, then you may have to go to leaching.
And we're going to have a track hoe or a backhoe in there. We can dig a trench in that old leach pad and just see. And if it doesn't work, you cover it up and throw some more grass seed on it and go away.
No, it may not have worked. We need to know the period, because if it was in the 80s, just because the price of silver went up, somebody might have turned around and put in very low-grade material on there to leach. What does that material less say? If it's less than an ounce, now it's $17, I wouldn't even bother about it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but it just seems like you can dig a little trench and take a few samples and find out what you're dealing with.
Sure.
Look at it, see if I'm sure it's all oxide. So,
well, volume-wise, it's a relatively small percentage of the overall dump volume that's present there at the property.
See, if you've got 200,000 tons here, at 5 ounces on average is 1 million ounces of silver. That's $17 million of value. Okay, if we can make this viable, economically viable, and then you may want to look at that 15,000 tons of material that's sitting there. Okay, if it's 15,000 at and if it only contains 1 ounce, okay, it may not even be worthwhile to look at for $100,000 worth. So it becomes an economic question.
Well, there's some there besides silver.
What'd you find? What other components?
Lead, copper. Copper's pretty low.
What content of zinc?
We didn't stop to calculate.
Well, we'll find all that out when we do the test.
Yeah, there's some zinc in this material as well.
Measurable gold?
No. Just a whiff.
Platinum?
Ward, what materials did you find when you were doing the test? Did you find just silver, or what? I thought you had several different minerals.
Yeah, there was a little. I just sampled the dumps that were exposed, and mostly right around near the road, and it looks like, no gold. The silver, I think, is in the 4 to, I don't have the composite, but 4 to 6 ounce, and then copper and zinc. I mean, lead and zinc came in about 0.5 to 1%.
Right. Yeah, there's about about 0.5% lead, and there were a couple of higher hits on the zinc, like up to 6%, but most of it was about 0.5%.
Yeah, I got one at 6.5 and one at 2.
And if you've got that much a value of zinc, then you may want to look at flotation. Besides gravity, if you can recover gravity and just get, if there's zinc, then the material, again, if it's oxides, then you can't really recover zinc unless and until you go ahead with acid leaching, and that's getting into a completely different ball game, getting the permits and all that. My philosophy is, I think our philosophy would at this stage be, let's just look at recovering silver, and if you can't recover silver by gravity or by quick leaching, we may then have to look at flotation and produce a flotation concentrate with lead and silver go one way, and then produce a zinc concentrate and see if you can't market that. But for 200,000 tons, I wouldn't even bother to try and make the process very complex. Just get the silver values and be done with. Would you say that's right?
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the dumps?
Yeah.
Only?
Dumps only.
Is there any surface, any material within 100 feet of the surface that could be mined economically?
Do you hear that question?
No, I
Could you repeat that one?
Any other evidence of mineralization or dikes or ore material or veins in the field trip, or that we're aware of that are near the surface?
There's the potential for unmined ore in the main workings. Probably won't be much, but it would, depending on what you learn from your metallurgy and the work on the dumps, then you would need to decide if and how to drill it. And then there's the potential deeper in the old mine workings that at some point, you know, you'd want to test. But I recommend that we just start out with the simplest and easiest and go, you know, get deeper and more complicated as in phases.
That's not how most mining companies do it. They try to get real complicated and expensive early.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's part of the reason most of them
are not doing so well.
Most of the large mining companies don't make any money.
Yeah. You have to own a bank to have a mining company.
No, I mean, there's a famous saying that I use. Do you know how do you make $1 million in the mining business? You start with 10. When you're down to 1, you pull out.
There you go. Why did you tell me this so late in my career?
Yeah, I'm on the board of directors of a whole bunch of junior companies, and our objective is start small and stay small. I can give you an example of a company called Canuck Resources, basically Endeavor Silver in Mexico. I was involved with them, advised them. This had to be about 18 years, maybe 20 years ago. Took one small operation with the capitalization was zero when we started. And that company has a capitalization of $1 billion today, and they don't have a single mine which processes more than 2,000 tons a day.
I'm with you on that.
It's got to be started small, and money doesn't. My PhD was in mineral economics. I advised some of the largest mutual funds, and I can tell you, money does not grow on trees. You got to be very wise in how you spend it. And by spending a little bit of money, you can turn around and figure out whether to walk away or to continue on this exploration project.
I have a question. If we were to do the simple gravity extraction, would the grinding equipment, the grinding, all be done on site?
It'll all be. Eventually, if you're going to do the gravity process, we would just develop the process, and equipment would all be bought and put at site, yes.
Okay. Is there historically any problem getting, if you got the right equipment, you can keep the dust down and all that kind of thing. That's fairly easy to handle.
Oh, yeah. No, man, we've been involved in projects. We work very closely with the junior companies and become their metallurgists. And Endeavor Silver being one of them in Mexico, Ron's worked on two or three projects for them. And I come in more from the consulting side. Ryan will do all the test work. We'll look at the numbers, we'll interpret it, we'll develop the process. There's at least 10 to 12 mines that have been developed in the last decade and a half based on RDI's test work. And we've been involved with them, and they range in value from $50 million to as high as $700 million projects.
On a small mining operation, what is a reasonable volume of material to process a day? How long would it take to process 100 or 200,000?
No, but it all depends. If you want to if you want to set up, if it's a simple gravity circuit, set up a 5 ton or 10 ton an hour operation. At 10 tons an hour, you're looking at 240 tons, 90% availability, so you can process 200 tons a day. And if it's 5 ounces of silver, then you're looking at 1,000 ounces of silver in the ore, and you would get, let's say, 75%, so 150 ounces.
1,000 days for 200 days.
And that's a reasonable return. It won't be very high returns, but for the operation, you can do a reasonably good job. Then again, it depends. If all you're looking at 200,000 ounces, you're looking at 200,000 tons of ore that's sitting there, a waste. You need to run a 3-year mine life, minimum to give. So, based on that, you're looking at maybe 100 tons, 80 ton operation.
How many people?
Oh, in the smaller operation, you can, if it's a gravity circuit, you can run with three people. And run an 8-hour operation. You don't have to run a 24-hour operation.
Yeah. Keep it small.
Well, if we could do that and do a bunch of drilling and testing, prove up the
along the way. Yeah. Does anybody have any idea how deep that contact between the Purchase shale and the limestone that was heavily mined is from the surface on the up dip part of the?
Well, it actually outcrops and then dips into rising topography. So the parts of the mine that the farthest down dip extent of those workings are probably 600-700 feet below the surface, but the parts that remain untested are, I'd say, within 600 or 700 feet.
Yeah,
would be your maximum drilling depth.
Now that's not that Purchase shale base. That's that deeper dolomite for.
Yeah, that would be looking down deeper in the Montoya or the El Paso.
Yeah.
And it's fairly well defined where it's going to be. That the mineral pretty well is associated with those two they call them rhyodacite dikes. I don't think the dikes themselves have anything to do with the mineral, but they both occupy the same structure.
So
I think the way to go is to evaluate the economics of the dump and then build on that.
Right. But one step past the dumps, does it make any sense to focus on that area that's, where just down dip of where the outcrop is? Working down, I guess it depends on where the dike is. But.
Well,
those would be the shortest drill holes. Is just drill angle holes that would hit through the dike and then test on either side of the Fusselman. I think that's the name of it. But those would be short holes.
Right. Well, the historical writings state that those old miners did a lot of high grading and concentration within the mine, and they only hoisted the concentrated material. So,
yeah, there's going to be a lot of backfill that any of us would be really happy with.
Yeah. So is any of that near surface, I guess, was the question.
Yeah, right. We don't know that until we get into it.
And can you get to it with a track hoe on the upper end of it?
No, that probably, to get at any significant amount of tonnage out of those old mines, you'd have to go in with a decline, and fortunately, the dip of the beds is about, the same as what a decline would be, so it would be relatively simple, presuming there's enough left there to make it worthwhile.
I mean, I would suspect then there's quite a bit left there because they must have chased the veins and gone after the high grade. Okay.
Yeah,
if they were direct smelting the high grade, they had to be at least 50 ounces per ton or more. So there may be a lot of 10 to 15 ounce material still maybe underground.
Yeah, I agree. I think they hand cobbed it there because they were having to ship it all the way to El Paso, and I think that was by horse or mule or something. So they were probably pretty good at picking out the high grade.
Even by lantern, huh?
Yeah.
LED lights.
No, I mean, I've got a whole bunch of books that since I do read during the rush days, Leadville and Breckenridge and some of the other areas here, it's the same story. We are finding some of these mines do contain a significant amount of resources that what were considered low grade then are reasonable grade now with the improvement in technology.
That's what I would think. Well, they weren't looking for anything but silver, right?
No. Yeah, surely they weren't looking for anything but silver.
Right. I'm pretty sure it was just silver. And then when it got down to about 50 cents, I think things really crapped out. But they were talking about in some of the old news reports that a pound of ore would have about $5 or $6 in silver. That's good stuff, as I figure it.
Yeah, that's probably some 50-ounce stuff or something.
Yep, or 100 or 200 or whatever.
Well, do you, Ward and Dan, do you think that the samples we have are sufficient for analysis?
How much
or
do you
should
need, Deepak, to...
I would take a few more samples myself. Those are relatively cheap versus, getting a track hoe in or whatever. But
do we also need to estimate the tonnage of the various dumps?
I think you can pretty well rely on the numbers that we see in the old data. That for right now, I think the money in this is to see if it's processable.
yeah, that would be my vote too.
Or basically see what the costs of processing are going to be.
What do we know from from history about the size of the dumps? Is it 100,000 tons or 200?
Well, they USS&R did some work on the dumps back in, I think, the 20s, and I can't remember the number exactly, but it was in excess of 100,000 tons, and just looking from what you can see around there, I think 200,000 is probably pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if we want to go out and, put some, get some points and then sort of jigger in a bedrock, we could probably figure it out pretty close, but I'm not sure it's all worth that. I'm with Dan on seeing if you can recover this stuff first and then worry about that.
Okay, so we have those samples that, are they sufficient to do what you think we might need to do?
What kind of a sample, Ryan, ideally would you like to have?
Well, it just would be a question of what you think is somewhat representative. We would probably only need 20 to 40 kilos of sample, so a bucket or two of sample to do the test work.
Okay, that's representative.
But you've got
from each point.
Different areas? 2 areas?
Seems like you'd want to take a couple, 3 from each of the 2 big dumps, in my mind. And I mean, there's tens of dumps, little dumps, and I'm not sure it's worth messing with those. But you'd want to know something about the big ones. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Dan.
Concentrate on those big ones, and
yeah.
This is not a quantitative study. It's basically what you'd call a characterization study. To just can it be done? Does it look like it'd make money? And then we'll go from there.
Do you think the one that Dan, that you and I sampled there, that's one of the bigger dumps, and then Ward, you and I sampled that other one. Have we kind of got that covered, or do we need to go?
Yeah, I think you've got it. You've got a pretty good sample there to start with.
Okay.
Are we thinking the dumps are at Naiad, Queen, and Satisfaction Extension?
That's where you took samples, and then Brian and I took it at the Satisfaction Extension,
right?
Which is a pretty strange name.
Yeah, I think those 2.
Once you're satisfied, right?
Those 2 dumps are
what she said.
pretty characteristic of the whole district.
I didn't hear
Say
that.
again?
Said I think those 2 dumps are pretty representative sample.
Okay.
So we must have enough material right now for someone to do their hocus pocus on it. And
what all would that include, Ryan?
Well, we'd go ahead and we'd prep the sample. Each sample we'd submit it for assay, obviously for silver, and then for anything else in ICP, most likely to get copper, lead, zinc, that sort of thing, just to see what's there. Then we'd go ahead and do a gravity test and a leach test, and just grind it to approximately 200 mesh for the leach test and 100 mesh for the gravity test, and run those and do the assays on the products and see what we have. That would probably be the minimal we would do. We may want to send something for mineralogy, and then potentially we could do a float test if the gravity and leaching doesn't pan out.
And when you do that, do you do I forget what they call it. It's sort of a hardness thing. Is how much grinding, how much energy it's going to take to grind that?
That's a bond work index. We could do that on the sample if that's something we want to do. It might be something after we figure out what you could recover from there for sizing of a mill.
Okay, yeah. Because that always figures in if it how much time and energy you need to bust up the stuff.
It actually grinds up pretty easy, Ward. Would that include a whole rock analysis essentially? Or
yeah, that would be the ICP whole rock analysis is very similar.
Okay.
I mean, where would the market be for it?
You're probably looking at about 3,000 or so a sample, and that's would be with probably some minimal mineralogy but no flotation. If you had the full gamut of doing a leach, characterization, leach, gravity, float, and mineralogy, you're probably looking closer to $4,500 a sample.
I don't know how far with that.
That's the cost, $4,500 a sample.
He didn't answer what you were asking.
And we would want to do those. In essence, we would have 2 samples. Dan,
Where is the buyer for it? Was my question.
You mean the product, the silver?
Yeah. Well, whatever we have. What we want to sell, where's the buyer?
If it's gravity, I don't know. You'd have to look. If it turns out to being a leaching operation, then you produce an impure silver, bullion. You could sell that to, Johnson Matthey in Salt Lake.
okay.
If you got it, we can figure out some way to sell it.
Well, a gravity concentrate, if he didn't want to sell it, he could put it in super sacks and store it, right?
Yeah, but that's no fun.
But that would be a very high grade material. What would that grade look like?
That's what we'll find out.
Yeah, we don't know that.
Okay. All right.
Do you have enough material if they need a couple buckets?
So,
you have a couple buckets.
yeah. So, Dan, would we, in essence, have 2 samples based on what we took?
Yeah.
Okay.
Use each dump. Send all the material. One dump would be 1 sample, and the other, what do we got? 5 buckets total? 3 on one and 2 on the other?
Yeah. Well, we're down to kind of like 2 on each one now.
That ought to do it. That sound good to you, Ryan?
Yeah, we could get our test work done with that.
But basically, you said as long as you've got, 10 to 20 kilos, you're good?
Yeah, we'd like 20 just because if we have to come back and do a bond work or anything like that, so
Yeah,
you're
you
using
said
the
20
same
to
sample,
40.
but
Yeah. Yeah, you had said 20 to 40. I wasn't looking at my notes, so okay.
We'll start with that, and if we have questions, someone can go there, and I'm happy to do it. Go there and take a bunch more and throw them on a UPS truck and send them up.
I'm going to turn back.
Okay. We want to let the DPI guys go, or RDI guys go, and just talk to your geologist?
Well, let me, what are on an average now, not just on an average, if we have 200,000 tons, what's the average recovery, and what products are we going to recover, and how much per month?
We won't know until we do this test.
I think you said 75%. That's what we would recover.
Well, I don't think you can determine a recovery until you do your test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd just be guessing.
That's what would be hiring them for, to figure that out.
Right. Okay.
But then the main variable is how many ounces per ton there are average in it.
Yeah. And what, I don't know that we could say that we have a representative sample from the standpoint of ounces per ton, but we would have a representative sample in terms of mineralogy and determining how workable this material is.
Exactly. That's exactly what you're going to be doing.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, that's the important thing for our test work, is to have representative mineralogy. The grade, the recovery extraction might change slightly due to grade, but this is going to tell you really probably fairly close to what you're going to get.
Dan, how close are you of doing your study that you're working on?
I'm probably a week or 10 days from getting all that pretty well, laid out and something we can meet and talk about. I've got some people coming in from Australia maybe next week or so that might modify my schedule a little bit, but at the moment I'm in pretty good shape time-wise.
I just sent Dan stuff that I didn't think was in the first batch that I'd gotten from 2006. So there may be some more. That's my fault because I had people here too, and just didn't get around to looking for everything. But
it's pretty, pretty straightforward what is possibly there and what you're going to have to do to develop it. But to me, the first step is to see what the recovery process and some idea what those costs are before we go start spending any real money out there drilling.
Well, we'll have to go inventory what we've got. And if necessary, I and Ward can go out there and get enough of what we need. But we need to go back and double check. So
the samples you've got will do to get this first, characterization study done.
Well, I'm sure of that. That one that Ward and I sampled, we might only have about 40 pounds of that. So, I need to double check that. That might get the most of the mineralogy and the characterization done. It just wouldn't get a. I'm not too worried about the bond test because our little jaw crusher and ball mill chewed it up. So.
Well, it's carbonate rock. There's no silicified rock or anything in there that would run your grinding costs up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what about Pat's machine? I keep asking about it. To crush it.
It might work.
We don't. I don't know if we need it or not, but it grinds it up to a powder.
Right.
Fish powder.
Right. And you would just have to do a grinding study with it, to see if it gets where you need it to be. Because that, Ryan, your work would determine how finely it needs to be ground in order to do a gravity. You kind of know already it's going to be about 100. Did you say about 100 mesh for?
Yeah, I mean it may change. You get better recovery, a little finer, a little coarser, but that's just kind of a starting point to see if it's going to work at all, because it may improve your recovery by maybe 5% or so, but the different grind size won't be a huge difference. So
That just adds on to the cost.
Okay.
Okay, sum it up. The dumps are about 200,000 tons.
Right. So if you use 4 ounces.
And is that a reasonable deal, 4 ounces a ton?
Well, he's getting
silver or
2 silver. We don't know anything about the other material yet.
I think, though, whatever process falls out of this early work, you can apply that to anything that's going to be left underground. It'll be the same rock.
But not necessarily the same grade.
Yeah, grade doesn't make that, unless it gets real low or real high, the variation of grade isn't going to affect things much.
Seems like it would be better grade underground, but who knows?
Guess it depends on how good they were the first time around.
Yeah. You would think the dumps on the surface were when they didn't find any evidence of mineralization or material.
How do you reconcile the numbers we're getting out of the dumps, and they knew what they were looking for?
No,
I think it was all hand cobbed, or maybe they had a gravity circuit or something. But there were, like I said, out in the field, there were a couple of smart Chinese guys or smart Mexican guys that were just sitting there throwing out the stuff that wasn't so good and throwing in the stuff that was good, because they had to haul it 100 miles or whatever it is to El Paso
by horse.
Right. That wasn't a freight liner.
No automatic transmission.
No automatic. Yeah. Well, the transmission was automatic. It just took a lot of hay.
Yeah.
So the potential at 4 ounces is 800,000 ounces out of the dump.
$16. But there's other material. Huh?
Yeah, like $12 or $14 million.
Yes, please.
But if they just do the gravity, you won't realize any of the other minerals unless you take it, do something else with it. What about the if you just do the gravity?
If you get to a refiner, they can get everything out of it.
If you just do the gravity, what
That's
kind
what I
of?
don't understand. If it's in there and you take it to a refiner, they can.
Well, you're not going to take it to a refiner if you do gravity.
Concentrate.
Just a concentrate.
You would just do that concentrate.
And you're just going to give them the other material?
It wouldn't
stays
go.
on the ground.
It wouldn't go. It would stay there. So, what kind of a dump or pile would you have if you had if you just did gravity?
You mean the tailings?
Yes.
Well, they would be ground up, and you'd have basically to house them and go through the permitting process of whatever it is to do it. There would be no chemicals in it, so it would be,
There's probably room right down by the old heap leach for all of that. And then you probably have to cover it up and put in begonias or whatever to make everybody happy.
Let's figure out if there's any money in it, and then go from there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. But John has these questions that we've got to answer.
I think you can get begonias for like $4.95 for a quart pot. They're on sale now because it's the end of the summer.
Okay.
So you're going to ship some stuff? Is that what y'all decided?
Yeah, we will go back to our facility and inventory what we've got, find out if we've got enough. If we're on the edge, Ryan, I may give you a call and talk to you about it. But otherwise, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but are we going to go ahead and...
Well, I want to see kind of the numbers again. But
did he say $4,000
for the full?
But how many times $4,000? I think that's 2 times $40,000.
$45,000. It's like $9,000 or $10,000. It's like $9,000 or $10,000.
This is my office. Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, Dan's going to have his deal finished when?
A week or 10 days. And I guess they can come up here and meet on it.
Okay.
But if we're going to do this, it really needs to be a representative sample. You keep mentioning it might not be representative, but
Not in regard to grade, but yes, in terms of mineralogy.
yeah. So we'd still,
in that
the
respect,
process wouldn't change.
No. If you can get it out, you can get it out. And it's not barren material.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Okay. I guess that's all for now.
Want to talk to Ward and Dan some more, or you done?
I don't know what to ask them other than...
Yeah, this pretty well covers it, actually.
Well, just let me know if you think you need more sample, and I can buzz down there and...
What were you talking about that you might have some things from 10, 12 years ago?
Oh, just sample results from the dumps that, and those are mainly the dumps down by the road. I didn't go up on those big dumps.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We're set?
We're set?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you guys.
Thank you.
Let me know what I can do, and happy to help.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Bye.
All right, well, thanks, Deepak and Ryan, and I'll be in touch with y'all.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Bye-bye.
So, we recorded it, but I don't know how to play it back. It said
We'll keep it recorded.
Yeah. Hello? So everybody else is hung up. Teresa didn't tell me how to replay it, but she did tell me how to get to the recording, and it stated it was recording.
Well, my next deal is how do you print it out?
That's going to be hard.
You're still on the phone.
Yeah. I'm just afraid to hang up, but I guess
You
I
have
would.
to someday.
I know. I don't know what else I could do.